What is up, guys? Jay Morales here. Today we are going to cover operator. If you don't know what operator is, it is one of the instruments from Ableton Live. This is just the basics of what operator is, its uses, and what you can do with it. If you want to learn more about synthesis and all that sort of stuff, there's plenty of tutorials out there. I might do some in the future. It's a very, very deep subject. There's lots of stuff to learn and it gets really nerdy. I particularly love it, but today we're just gonna cover operator and its capabilities. Cool, here we go. Welcome, we are here in Ableton Live. I am going to pull up the operator, which is what we're covering today. Already got it pulled up right here. So what is operator? Operator is a FM synth that comes stock with Ableton Live. Super powerful. FM synth just means that it is frequency modulated, so waves use each other to modulate themselves. So there's three different parts to the operator. You'll see here on the left hand side are all your operators per se, that where your signal comes from. So you'll choose the different waveforms and this is where they are. You have four different ones, A, B, C, and D. In the middle, you have what's called envelopes, oscillators, and filter control. So you're able to control the attack, decay, and release of the signal. You also have some looping functions, phase, feedback, shapers, that sort of stuff. We'll cover that. And then lastly, on the right-hand side is the low frequency oscillators, filtering, pitch envelope, time, tone, and volume, and then your algorithms. So now we'll go back to our left-hand side. This is where all the oscillators live. You have four different ones. You can choose the level right here. So just regular, pretty much volume. This coarse knob, what that means is just you're able to choose the octave that the oscillator's in. So that's basically what that's for. Then fine-tuning, it's a little bit of a slower, a gradual shift. If you want to do fixed, that just means you choose a specific frequency to target. So, if you want 143 hertz, boom, that's what you get. To show you what frequency modulation does, I'm gonna open up this new oscillator, so you'll see that it starts to take another shape. So that's how frequency modulation works. So those are the basic controls. To pick a wave, you just go to here in the middle section where it says wave, and we have a bunch of different ones. There's saw, square, noise, triangle. You'll see that there's all these different lines right here. These are what's called harmonics. So you can choose specific harmonics for the wave to take shape. So you'll see that it switches over to user because now it's not the original wave that you chose, and now it's getting moved by the user. Cool little trick. If you just want to choose even harmonics, you can choose even, just right click, or odd. So that's a pretty cool trick if you just want to do something very quickly. You can also export your wavetables if you want to use them, in something else like Serum or Massive or FM8, something like that. To go a little bit in depth about more of the harmonics, you can choose how many you want to have. So you can do 16, 32, and 64. The envelope control. So this relates to the shape of the wave that's being generated. So if you want something that's more percussive, take down the decay, or if you want something that's longer, you can put up the decay. So play around with this. This is just your basic attack, decay, sustain, and release control. I also go in depth on this in my simpler and sampler tutorial, so make sure you go and watch that. There is also this looping function, so you can do loop, beat, sync, and trigger. So it creates an arpeggio or some type of loop within already that waveform, so it kind of layers it on top of that. So you'll see as I start to move that it starts to become an arpeggiator. So with the beat, you sync it, and then with the loop, you can kind of choose individual times. So if you wanted to do something a little bit more precise. The sync, same deal as the beat. And then the trigger, it just re-triggers every time that you hit the the key. That is the middle section, very straight to the point. Talking about waves, so this phase control right here, it actually relates to the time that the wave starts. So if you wanted to re-trigger to start at the 0 point of the wave every time, that's what this R is for. So now we'll move on to this last section, which is the LFO section. Filter, pitch envelope, time, tone, and volume, and then the algorithms. So the LFO, this is one of my favorite things about Operator. So the LFO is just basically a way to shape the signal with another wave. So you'll see that as I turn up the rate, it goes, or it goes a lot faster. You can choose the amount right here. You can choose the type of wave that you want to do. You can choose low, high, or sync for the type of oscillator that you want. So if you want really, really high pitches, you go to high. Low pitches, you choose the L, and then sync, which syncopates to a rhythm. You can also set a destination specific for the LFO. So you can either choose the filter, you can choose any of the oscillators, which is a really cool feature, just because you can have let's say a sine wave for this first oscillator, and then in B you can have it as a LFO. So let's do that right now. So let's just have it affect B. So you can hear that it's just a sine at the bottom, and then the top is actually getting affected by the LFO. So that's pretty cool. You can get some really interesting textures that way. You can also set it to another destination here within the operator, which is really cool. So play around with this. You know, there's really no right or wrong way of doing things. It's all about experimenting and having fun. All right, now the filter. So this is just a simple filter. You can choose, you know, high pass, low pass, band pass, bell, or this morph section, which is a mix between a low pass and a high pass. If you want to see what the filter's doing, there's this little box right here that where the oscillator used to be, and it turns into filter. So if you want to see what it's doing, you can move it either by hand, and it's connected to these parameters right here. On this one, there's only Oscar, but if we go back to something like this, there's a bunch of different excuse me, there's a bunch of different filters. So there's a regular clean, which is just the Ableton stock one. Then you have OSR, which stands for Oscar, which is a British type of filter. You have the MS2 from the Korg, really awesome. This is actually my favorite, along with the PRD, which is from the Moog. I don't remember what the SMP was. Anyway, play around with them. The OSR and a few of the other ones, they have, once you pull this up, you'll see that it has a filter drive, so you can overdrive the filter. And you get all types of different flavors with the different types of filters. On top of that, there's something called a shaper, which is similar to a drive, but it sounds different. It's a little bit more high-end, fuzzy. And this comes standard with a lot of the instruments in Ableton Live. So play around with that, and you'll hear it right away. You know, you can do soft, hard, 4-bit, and then you can choose how the shaper is taking effect right here in the shape drive. So that's the filter section. Now onto the pitch envelope. So if we turn this on, kind of the same deal as the LFO. You can assign it to any destination of the operators. You can assign it to the operators or another destination. You have the glide right here, which basically is the portamento control. This is just the transition between one note to the other. So you can hear that kind of sound. That's what that's for. As you turn up the percentage on the pitch envelope, you'll start to hear more of this right here. So this is basically a control for the way the pitch envelope behaves. So here you can see that I'm almost making a kick, right? So there's some really interesting uses for that, but it's just basically the trajectory of what the pitch is going to do. So the more you turn it up here, the more it's gonna go this way, and the more you go negative, it actually goes the opposite way. So you can do some really crazy stuff with it, kind of wobbly pitch sound. So the spread, it's a chorusing effect. So as I start to, you'll hear that the signal kind of spreads out. So it's a chorusing, stereo effect. Transposition, this is pretty straightforward. It just transposes it up or down in the keyboard by semitones. And then we have the time, tone, volume, and then the algorithms. You see that there's this little kind of Nintendo looking stack right here. So basically what that means is the oscillators are affecting each other. So that's what frequency modulation is all about. But you have different algorithms that you can use. So this is the more typical one. On the complete opposite end is this one, which is horizontal. So what that means is each individual oscillator is acting by itself. It's not modulating each other. So this is really cool to create really layers of things. But you can play around with these and see what the different flavors give you. And they always act from the top down. Then you have this matrix right here. This is similar to what we saw with the pitch envelope and the LFO. So you're able to route different things around the operator to affect each other. So if I use, let's say, velocity to affect the LFO rate per se, right? So turn it up all the way. Right? So if I hit it a little low, if I hit it hard, you'll hear it. So if I hit it low, and if I hit it high, so it acts on the velocity of me hitting the key. So that's really cool. Play around with this. This is one of the really fun parts about synthesis and matrices. Then lastly, right here at the bottom, you have your voices. So if you want polyphonic sound, you can get up to 20 voices. Retrigger, so it retriggers every time that you hit it, the voices. Interpolation and aliasing, that just has to do with the way that the waves are treated and smoothed out. And then there's 3 different panning functions, just regular panning, then pan, it's affected by the key that you're hitting, and then random panning, which just, anytime you hit it, it's just going to put it anywhere. So that's why it's random. That's pretty much it. It's just a simple overview. This is not an in-depth tutorial about what synthesis is. I just want you guys to get the basics of how to use the synth, and everything else is just about exploration, having fun, messing around with things, messing things up, and coming up with cool things that you can maybe use later. My favorite thing for this is just to use it as a bass. So what I'll usually have right here is just a sine wave, and then I will go ahead and filter it down. What happens a lot with operator is that you will sometimes get a lot of clicking. I don't know what that is. Sometimes it has to do with the the envelope, but sometimes it's just weird and it starts to click. But a way to eliminate that is just by using this filter to cut that top end out, so it eliminates the click. So it's a really cool thing that I like to use it for. It's super simple. You already have something to work with, and then the last thing I like to do is just to give it a little bit of drive to make it a little bit more dirty. So it gives it a little bit more, grit. So that's what I use it for. Hopefully you guys got something out of this. This is one of my favorite instruments to use for just simple, basic sounds. So let me know what you think. If you like this content, please subscribe below. Hit me up on all the socials. I am J Morales Music on all of them. Let me know what you want to learn more about. If something wasn't unclear or something you want to expand on, I'm always happy to talk. This is what this is all about. It's about sharing and learning from each other. I will see you in the next tutorial. Peace.